Part 3, Food Plan 202. We covered the basics of food planning when we discussed making a plan and reducing your trips in chapters 4 and 5. Now we are going to move on to some other planning strategies I use to reduce the time, money, and energy I spend on food. Chapter 6, Be Food Flexible. Wait a minute, be food flexible? What on earth does that mean? Hang with me for just a minute while I explain. Being food flexible starts out with a friendly and courteous announcement you may have never considered before. Recipes can be budget busters. They really can be. Let's say I see a recipe for a flank steak spinach salad, and I decide to put it on my meal plan. It seems healthy and fresh. It aligns with my food values, so it goes on the meal plan. The ingredients needed for it go on my shopping list. I get to the store and flank steak is $7.99 a pound. Spinach is in short supply, so it's at the inflated price of $6.99 for a bag large enough to feed my family. The recipe calls for some special spices and fresh oranges for the vinaigrette. Oranges aren't in season and the spices aren't on sale, so I spend $15 on oranges and spices. Without really thinking about it, I have just spent $30 on a spinach flank steak salad. This is not a far-fetched story. It happened to me countless times before I started taking grocery prices seriously. And I bet it has happened to you as well. This is especially true for things like potlucks, baby showers, birthday parties, or holidays. We get something specific in our mind, and if we aren't willing to be flexible about it, it can cost us more than we want to pay. To lower your food costs as much as possible, you need to free yourself from the need to perfectly follow a recipe. While I used to consider recipes a set of rules to follow, I now consider them a suggestion. You know that if a recipe calls for snow peas, you don't actually have to use snow peas, right? You can go crazy and use something like carrots or broccoli or peas or water chestnuts or zucchini or cauliflower. For real, there's literally no law about this. No recipe police, no citations, no fines, and no one ever needs to know. I won't tell, I promise. If I'm not going to be using recipes, what in the heck am I going to be feeding my family? I thought you would never ask. Rather than using recipes, I try to think of my meals in terms of an equation. Not a math equation, but rather a food equation. A food equation is a concept I made up and use all the time in my cooking. It's a combination of foods that I aim to base all my meals on. It allows me to freely swap out expensive ingredients with ingredients I can source inexpensively. I form our meals based on this equation. I call it my food formula. Here's the food formula we follow in our home. Meat plus a starch plus a veggie plus another veggie plus a healthy fat plus seasonings equals my next meal. Since we are new food friends, I will tell you something important about me here at Dinner for $1. I am not a dietitian, a nutritionist, a food coach, a trainer, or a health and wellness coach. I am not here to help you make food choices for your family. I am here to help you save money on the food that you choose to buy for your family. Because I am not a trained food expert, I am not suggesting that the food formula listed above is one that anyone should use. I'm not suggesting it's healthy. It is what we have chosen to eat based on the research I have done and our family's needs. I only share my food formula with you to give you an example you can use to determine your own. So if this food formula doesn't match your food values or the needs of your family, that's A-okay. Just make your own. I promise not to judge your food formula, and I hope you don't judge mine either. Dinner for $1 is a judge-free zone. When I form my meals based on that equation, rather than a recipe, it frees me up immensely in the kitchen, and I yield savings to my time, money, and energy. Let me share with you the benefits of being food flexible and using a food formula in place of recipes. Number 1, it allows me to freely swap out ingredients. This reduces my grocery bill. Let's say that the recipe calls for chicken breasts, but they're not on sale and I have an abundance of chicken thighs on hand. Simple swap. It may change the texture or form of the food, but the end result is the same. Feeding my family a tasty, whole food diet on a strict budget. This flexibility allows me to capitalize on food I was able to purchase at deep discounts. When I use ingredients that I have sourced at rock bottom prices, my food bill lowers dramatically over time. Number 2, when I'm in a time crunch, using the food formula allows me to quickly assess what I have on hand to create a simple, fast meal. This reduces my eating out budget. Let's say that I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off, haven't planned for anything. It's 4:30 and I have no idea what I'm going to make for dinner. This is, of course, purely hypothetical and has never, ever happened in my house, right? When I work according to a food formula rather than using a recipe, I can scan my fridge for any usable ingredients I have on hand and quickly create something. A quick scan of my stash shows me that I have leftover rice. Pro tip number 1, whenever I make rice, I always make a double batch and put the extra in my fridge or freezer. I also have a bag of pre-cooked chicken in my freezer. Pro tip number 2, I aim to always have 1 to 2 bags of pre-cooked chicken in the freezer for times just like this. And lastly, I have a bag of frozen mixed vegetables. That brings me to pro tip number 3. Keeping a bag of frozen mixed veggies on hand ensures we can always add veggies to any dish. So I throw the chicken in a pot of hot water for a quick defrost, toss the veggies in a skillet for a few minutes, and then throw the rice and chicken with some teriyaki sauce. For those in our family that can have eggs, they get a fried egg on top. Bam, just like that, chicken fried rice. In less than 30 minutes, I have created one of our family's save me from takeout meals. I don't need a recipe to tell me how to make this meal. I just looked at my food formula, looked at what I have available, and then put it together. From panic to table in about 30 minutes, which is conveniently the same amount of time it takes to pick up takeout. Anytime I can avoid takeout, it saves our family $25 to $35. Number 3, it allows me to repurpose my leftovers. This reduces my waste and saves me time in the kitchen. We don't mind reheating a meal and having it a second time, but any more than that and we are not going to eat it. Previously, we found ourselves throwing away a lot of leftovers. When we decided to get our spending under control, this was one of the areas I focused on improving. Now, to avoid throwing out leftovers, I think about how to repurpose them, not just reheat them. By thinking in terms of an equation, I can look at what I have available and turn it into a completely different meal. Then my family doesn't even know it was yesterday's meal. If your family will not eat leftovers at all, I encourage you to think about repurposing them in some way. Think about your food equation and see if you can take the leftovers in your fridge and turn them into a meal your family will eat. Now, let me show you what this looks like in our home with our food formula. In your workbook, you will see 3 pages of infographics demonstrating how we use the food formula in our home to create complete meals. You will want to reference your workbook now in order to see how we put those together. You have seen my food formula, and you have heard how using a food formula saves me money. Now it's time to develop your own. Take a moment right now and think about this. If you had to ditch all the recipes and put your food values into a food formula that you could use to feed your family with, what would it be? You might be wondering what food values are. Food values are the things that are most important to you in your food life. For me, my food values are simple, tasty, whole food, lots of produce, allergy-free, and meals for $1 per person. I use these values to form all my meals. Action point. Take a moment to jot down your food values. What is most important to you in your food life? Now use those food values to create a food formula that you could use to serve your family. Go to your fridge and freezer right now and see if there are any meals you can put together in the next day or 2 using your food equation. Lastly, jot down a list of meals your family would enjoy using your food formula.